what it is about this laptop camera that is all blurry and fuzzy, but hopefully you can see me clear enough, well enough. And more importantly, hopefully you can hear me. And so this conversation is about the black female archetype. And the way that I see it, I'm going to kind of break it down. I wish I had taken some notes, but I'm just going to go off the top of my head for this one. So in my last video, I was talking about qualities of leadership. And one thing that I mentioned was this balance that I feel like an effective leader has. Not being all one way, not being all another way, right? And I've even thought, doing personal inventory as far as my personality, I have a lot of different dynamics to me. I'm very versatile. I wear many hats, literally and figuratively. I can be funny, witty, clever. I can be the life of the party. I can be more laid back, more cerebral, more introspective, so on and so forth, right? I'm pretty versatile. But as a leader, as a boss, I'd have to say that I would probably lean towards the more compassionate side. So it's very possible that I would need to outsource the sternness. And don't get me wrong, I can be firm and I can be stern. But part of making a team, the components of an effective team, is being able to have the people who can kind of be stronger in the categories that you might be a little bit more weak. And you provide the same to them. And one thing that I will say when it comes to this conversation of black women and the black female stereotypical archetype is we really don't know who black women really are in an organic and natural state because we've been subjected so long to dysfunction and abnormal circumstances. I don't know how black women would be with the removal of the dynamics that we've been subjected to. It's really just a speculation. It's like a dreamland. Like, how would an untampered with, untarnished, unhumiliated, unvictimized, protected, respected, dignified, not subjected to extreme situations and mental abuse, mind games. How would a black woman look without all of that daddy issues? And how would a black woman look? I've never seen one. It's like an anomaly to me. It's like a dinosaur. I've never seen one. I've never met one. And so some people say, well, you said you can't be a damsel in distress and a she-ro at the same time. I think that there's a little bit more to that conversation. I think that we have to have a balanced approach when it comes to people. It's not one way or the other. I think that if we are so fixated on one extreme or the other extreme, that makes us almost in the category of dictators or, very cruel people without the ability to look from a empathetic or compassionate lens. And so my last article on Wix.com, Say Grace, which is the template to my website that I will be launching in 2021. The reason why I haven't been writing articles is because I believe that the website has more than enough content currently I will be posting recipes as I hope to also do a virtual cookbook for 2021, but I will be posting more recipes in time. All of the articles I wrote, all of the concepts I thought of, it's completely original ideas. If you guys get a chance to check it out, it's Say Grace, all one word, on Wix.com. And when we talk about Black female dynamics, the Black female archetype, I had to do the last article as homage to one of my favorite Black women that I've ever met, Dr. Toni King, who was my best professor, probably one of my best teachers in life. And she was this brilliant, powerful, intelligent, uplifting, strong, small but mighty Black professor at Denison University. And she was so effective in her approach as a professor and the way that she empowered her students, not just the Black students, all students, to use their voice. It's just something that you'll never forget. These are the type of people that leave a permanent imprint in your mind. And thank God for her, because she made me a lot more prepared for life than what my former years would have made me. And don't get me wrong, no dig at my mom. My mom taught me a lot, a whole lot. But Dr. Toni King broke it down in a way that I had never heard of. And we studied. I ended up becoming a Black Studies minor due to Dr. Toni King. I loved her that much. I said, I just want to be here just to take as many classes as she offers. And we studied courses of feminism and womanism and Black identity, and did a lot of research, read books and papers, and she was more on papers than tests, but we took some tests on that too. And so she let us know that, and this is not something that she created, this is something that is researchable. There are three kind of stereotypical Black female archetypes. One is the mammy, one is the matriarch, and one is the Jezebel. And the mammy is Aunt Jemima. I think that I'm not sure, but I heard that they kind of like retired Aunt Jemima. It might have just been on an SNL sketch that I was watching, but it's possible. We're getting into a more PC, politically correct era. And she was basically the archetype of the mammy. And the mammy was a very heavy-set woman, always cooking, always tending to the children, not her children, but the slave owner's children, putting the slave owner's family pretty much above her and her personal needs. She just was a slave, a domestic slave. And not only was she a domestic slave, she was a happy domestic slave. So you don't see the mammy frowning too much. She was a happy servant. In theory, that's pretty much all she probably dreamed of what her life would compose of. She never actually thought of herself as more than just a subservient. She never thought of herself as being able to escape being a house nigga. She was a happy house nigga. And she was a non-threat in every way. That's why she was trusted around the children. She was big because she was comforting. So when it was time to put little Becca to bed, she had a little extra fat on her. And she was also a non-threat to the white woman slave owner because of her physique. And she wasn't known to be very sexy. She was a non-threat. So it's not, and it's not like the mammy didn't get raped. Of course the mammy got raped. But she was seen as less of a sexual threat to the dynamics of their family and understand that this conversation is always going to be centered around capitalism. It's always going to be centered around money. Because just the very fact that the mammy needed to be big was a money issue. Follow me here. You have to be unappealing to what my husband likes because he is my sense of security. And you coming in potentially threatening my sense of security is problematic. So money is always at the forefront. Money is always a part of this conversation, which is why I reiterate when discussing Black Lives Matter that there could not be a conversation if money was not a part of the conversation. If there was no demand for reparations, there shouldn't have been a talk at all. A demand for respect from who? For what? From people who don't want to respect you? Who don't respect you? Who get nothing out of giving you respect? That's what this whole thing is about? And no money? The Jezebel. The Jezebel was very different from the mammy. The Jezebel was typically seen as somebody that the white male was more attracted to. Often it was the slaves who came over who had bodies and features that were appealing. And then it was also the products of rape, the tragic mulatto, quote unquote, the biracial product of forced sex on the victims of slavery. Because understand, it wasn't just our manual labor. We weren't just picking cotton. Everything was for sale. Everything was a part of that. Our mouths, our vaginas, our behinds, our butts. We got screwed in every way. Literally and figuratively. Not for a couple years, for generations. And if you talked, and if you opened your mouth, it was a wrap for you. For centuries. Not 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We're talking over 400 years that we were raped continuously, and we bore children just to be raped continuously. And so the Jezebel was more sold towards sex slavery. She wasn't out there in the fields as much as she was in the bed. That's where her work came in. She was putting in work in the bedroom, subjugated to the wildest fetishes imaginable. Being tied up and raped repeatedly. And if she opened her mouth, it was a wrap. Sometimes we wonder, are we the ancestors or are we the offspring of the strong or are we the offspring of the weak? Because somebody like me wouldn't have lasted. I would have been killed long ago for my mouth. I would have said, fuck this and fuck you too. I'd rather die than be your motherfucking slave. They would have killed my ass a long time ago. So I wonder, are we the descendants of the strong or the descendants of the weak? Because if you fought back, it was a wrap for you. If you talked too much, it was a wrap for you. Then we get to the matriarch. The matriarch was the strong, woolly haired, often depicted dark skinned, strong, alpha woman. Strong, unconquerable strength, impenetrable strength, fearless strength. Why? Because she was the husband and the wife. She was the man and the woman. So I want you to understand that these stereotypes were orchestrated. This was not something that just happened to be. Black women just weren't naturally a Jezebel, a mammy, or a matriarch. This was by design. We don't even know who we are if it was not by design. It's heartbreaking to me. It's heartbreaking to me. It's heartbreaking to me that someone would think that you incarnated on this earth, that your parents had you just to be controlled by them. The audacity that God put you on this earth as a free person, as a free spirit, as a free soul, just to be controlled by them? That was your sole purpose? That blows my mind. It blows my mind. So when we talk about the Cardi B's, the Megan the Stallions, Nicki, I'm going to try my best to dissect this in a balanced way. Because yes, I do believe that personal responsibility is always something that needs to be a part of the conversation. But I want people to also understand that these things have been going on for a very long time. This is nothing new. And when people think that they're operating in a way that's just free and willing and, yeah, I'm free spirited, this is my choice, sexual liberation, this is my choice, I'm choosing to do these things, I'm choosing to be this. I wonder if you had a husband and a dad and you were properly nurtured and your self-esteem was intact like it should be, and you had money, because we come from a God of abundance and prosperity, would you do the things you do? Would you feel the need to operate in the form that you are operating in, or is this a response to your circumstance? And I believe that it's more the latter than it is the former. I really want people to understand that what we see unfolding is a matter of how people are choosing to respond, react to an unideal, to say the least, circumstance. These are not ideal situations. These are not healthy individuals with high self-esteem, with nurturing families and fathers and husbands and money and community. These are people responding to their bad circumstance. And so I really want us to have that perspective. Now, where does personal responsibility also come into the equation? Well, we are all here. God gave us a brain. And frankly, there's just not some people who are willing to do what they do. If you tell me, well, look, in order for you to become wealthy, you have to be like a Pied Piper. You have to like lead other people astray. Like we're cool with you becoming wealthy as long as you take other people down. Some people would say, hell no. And then some people say, where do I sign? Black women, Latin women, women of color are seen as over-sexualized. I don't think they come out of the womb lustful. I don't think they come out of the womb like, yeah, I want to be a seductress. I want to be a temptress. When we discuss nature versus nurture, I've not researched this, but I do have a theory. And mind you, laws are created because without the laws, people would be doing it. Like, I really want people to understand that, like, people, for the most part, aren't just, like, morally, like, and ethically responsible. Like, they don't do things because of it's against the law. And if it wasn't against the law, they would do it. So don't think that 9-year-olds, boys and girls, weren't getting raped on the plantation field. Don't think that 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds weren't getting raped on the plantation field. Of course they were. Children got raped. Guys and girls. The term motherfucker, do you know what motherfucker is about? Do you know why people say motherfucker? This was another thing that I learned in Black Studies as a Black Studies minor. It was a game that was played. The slaves were blindfolded, tied up, and the slave masters, for amusement, right, for entertainment. This is how they got their rocks off. This was how they got their shits and giggles off. For entertainment. Would blindfold the slaves and make the male slaves erect and force them to have group sex. And one of the people that they were having sex with was their mother, strictly for entertainment. Because that's how these freaks, these perverts got off. And that's where the term motherfucker came. So understand that if it's not against the law, people are going to do it. Understand that kids would still be getting raped if pedophilia was not outlawed. Be very clear about that. And whose children? Who else? The poor. This whole thing is by design. This is very deliberate. Why they keep people poor. And why no one wants to be poor. Who's trying to be subjugated to that shit? I don't want to get too emotional because I didn't know any of this stuff until I became a Black Studies minor. I learned about all of it. And there were times in class that students had to step out of the room to cry. White students, Black students, because it got too emotional. But I said I would rather know. I would rather know than not know. And so this is deeply rooted when we talk about the Jezebel archetype, because that's really, I mentioned the mammy, the matriarch. I might do another video on those other two archetypes. But when we talk specifically about the Jezebel archetype, I want to inform you all, this is very deeply rooted, and deeply rooted in a sense of being subjugated to sex slavery for generations from the ages of 6, 7, 8 years old, both males and females, both young men and women. And then the conditioning of that, where we haven't healed these wounds. And I grew up in a very multicultural atmosphere with white friends and white women as best friends, but we haven't really healed from the conditioning of that. And it's often not just what you're subjugated to. It's often not just these things that occur to you in your life, but it's also, well, who stood back and watched and didn't do anything? And you find out when you are a Black Studies minor that 40% of slave owners were white women. So it's like you watched us, like, for generations go through this stuff and stood back and did nothing. Like, you wanted us to be 3/5 of a human being. And there's been no reconciliation of that. And then we're just all expected to hold hands at this point and say kumbaya, when I don't think that things have changed all that much. I don't see there being a huge difference. And there's differences, of course. But I see it as more subtle, way more subtle than it was. And I'll get into that. So with this Jezebel archetype, and we talk about Megan Thee Stallion, we talk about Cardi B, we talk about this over-sexualized Black woman. Is it possible that after generations of this, that part of it is nature? Maybe some of these things do run through our DNA, being over-sexualized. Perhaps. And then nurture. If your great-grandma was a hoe, your grandma was a hoe, your mama was a hoe, no disrespect, but basically it was a lineage of passed down. Like, look, I don't want to be the outcast. I don't want to be unable to provide. And this is the way that women have decided to respond to extreme adversity. Like, all I have to do is just give my body up and I can provide for my family. What I'm saying is, this was not birthed through an empowerment. This was not birthed through a powerful, empowered sense of consciousness. This was not birthed from that. This didn't come from that. This didn't come from women saying, I can be anything that I want to be. I'm here to be who God has me here to be. This did not come from that. This came from desperation. This came from inhumane conditions. That's what this was birthed from. This came from extraordinary exploitation. This came from all doors being closed and no options provided. And on a side note, I mean, what kind of sadistic person would you be that you would make love to somebody who's unwilling to make love to you? I don't know. And my mom said I'll never get it because you're just not wired that way. She said you'll never understand because you're just not wired that way. You're not wired to think how these people think. But imagine how you could even get hard, how you could even get aroused by someone screaming for their dear life, please don't do this. And that gets you off? And so when we talk about the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallions and that freak energy, why is it such a saying, sex sells? It always does. Sex does sell. Always. Never not. Are they taking the easy route? Some might say. Because unlike our ancestors, we do have options. Like, you can go get your education. Now, don't get me wrong. You will still get paid less, and it still will suck. I believe that the average Black woman with a bachelor's degree, her net worth is about $9,000, $10,000. You can do your research on this. So the average black woman with a bachelor's degree still makes a fraction of what the average white woman makes with only a high school diploma. No. I'm sorry. A high school dropout. Oh, in 2020. In 2020. But people want to say that you're using the race card. But are so intellectually lazy when it comes to research, facts, history, statistics. Because it doesn't serve them to talk real numbers. It serves them for you to be at the bottom and subjugated to the things that they want to put you through. That's what serves them. Talking real facts, no thanks. No thanks. I'd rather not. I'd rather just pretend that you guys are just inferior, intellectually and in every way. And it kind of just allows me to just remain guilt-free from the role and the hand that I've played in it. Yeah, I'd rather just not know. I don't want to know anything about slavery. I don't want to know anything about Jim Crow. I don't want to know anything about redlining. No thanks. I'd rather just go with the lie and just say you guys are just inferior in every way and you're just over-sexualized. You're just born that way. That way I can continue with the lie to say I'm superior. Just naturally, just based off of what's less than 0.05% of my DNA. No. It's because I'm superior. I'm just saying, if 2020 was clear vision, if it was perfect vision 2020 and clearly, let's cut the shit. Let's cut the bullshit. Cut the shit. So yes, I see it both ways. Cardi B, Meg, you guys are going to have, of course, we're all going to be subjected to divine judgment at the end of the day. Okay, you knew that the message that you were giving wasn't right. And let's say they don't. Because you will meet people that really believe in what they're saying, right? They really, their minds are really fixated on what they're saying. Is it mental programming? Of course. Some people could talk about mental programming as far as an extreme and say it's mental programming like MK Ultra, which is like a government, mind control programming. But that's one extreme. I mean, that is it does occur, but it's also one extreme. Everybody's programmed just by their day-to-day existence. The fact that we've come to a place where we accept the unacceptable, that's mental programming, that's brainwashing. We've normalized dysfunction. I say this point over and over again. Over 70% of Americans are drug addicts or alcoholics. That's abnormal, guys. But we've normalized dysfunction. Why do we have to pop a pill for this? Why do we have to pop a pill for that? This is dysfunction, but we've normalized it. We've normalized and we think it's okay to go to McDonald's or Wendy's and eat crap. Eating crap is yeah, they're just average. Oh yeah, they have a beer. Beer is an intoxicant. The root word is toxic. You're drinking poison every Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. But that's normal. That's considered normal in our society. Yeah, I'm just gonna have a sweet cocktail, a sweet glass of poison. A fizzy, cold ice brew, poison. And this is normal. So programming is in full effect. We've normalized a lot of things that are abnormal. So it's very possible, people are programmed to think money over everything. That anything is okay and anything is excusable as long as you're getting a check. But ignorance of spiritual law is still not going to be an excuse when it comes to divine judgment. Just like when law enforcement pulls you over and says, did you know that you were speeding? yeah, the speed limit is 50 and you're going 65, that's a ticket. You could say, well, I didn't know. You're still going to have to go to court. And chances are you're still going to have to pay that fine. So part of being an adult is taking personal responsibility. And when we are when we are exterminating victim consciousness, one thing that we do have, which is different from our ancestors, is we can read now. They were not allowed to read. There were serious penalties if they were caught trying to open a book. They didn't even know how to read. They were not allowed to educate themselves. We are. As long as I've been alive, there's been public libraries. This is the age of the internet. We can look anything up, including spiritual law. Including, well, what are the repercussions of leading people astray? What are the repercussions of inheriting an indoctrination and then upholding it? So I would say if I have any issue with these young women, it's the fact that they do have the information that will let them know that what they're doing is not cool, because in a sense they are also their victims, but they're victimizing the victims. You don't know these girls don't have no dads and husbands and money? You are Pied Pipering them into whoredom. Well, girl, okay, you don't have a dad, so that means that, your self-esteem isn't really there, because typically it's the men that build up these young women's self-esteem. You don't have a husband, you don't have a man, which means that you don't have to necessarily only be with one man. So why not be a hoe, girl? Come be a hoe like us. Ah, you ain't got no options. What are the consequences of hoe culture? I told you guys straight up. My friend works for the Hip Hop Caucus. He's also one of the assistants of the minister, and he goes to Amber Rose's Slut Walk annually for voter registration. So I went to Amber Rose's Slut Walk a couple years in a row to go meet up with my friend. And basically it was saying that, rape culture and sexual assault and all of these things are not cool. I stand by that wholeheartedly. But also slut shaming. If I'm going to be a hoe, you can't shame me for that, because this is my body, this is my choice. Fine. I'm an artist. I don't tell people what to do, right? I don't like being told what to do. I don't tell people what to do. Fine. But I also live in Washington, D.C. I know that if I leave my door wide open, that something may go down. And guess what? I can still call the cops and they will still go find the burglar. But why not take precautionary measures? And then if we want to talk about sexual liberation, we also have to discuss what are the repercussions of sexual liberation. I'm not going to get too spiritual and talk about soul ties and soul attachments, that you actually have a soul tie to everybody that you have intercourse with. But let's just talk about very basic stuff. Pregnancy, unwanted pregnancy, abortions. Why is the number one cause of Black genocide abortions? We are killing millions of Black babies annually. Now, it may be not against the law, but Have we ever investigated if it is in accordance with spiritual law? How God views the woman that took her own child's life? And let's say you don't even believe in God. How do you feel? Go talk to therapists, go talk to counselors, psychiatrists, and psychologists. How many women talk about the fact that they were never able to get over that abortion? Let's just talk about the emotional repercussions. How many women are popping pills right now just to numb the fact that they killed their kid? Through abortion, they will never be the same. I was watching the documentary, the Lorena Bobbitt documentary. Really, that's the reason why she chopped his penis off. When I watched the Lorena Bobbitt documentary, I think it was last week, I looked at the whole thing. That's the reason that that man got his penis chopped off. I'm watching her sit down. I think it was MSNBC or 2020 or something like that. And she's talking, and everything was okay, you know, up until the fact that she told, that when she told him, she said, I had gotten pregnant, and the woman was from Venezuela. So, you know, babies are a big part of Latin culture. You know, having babies is like a big part of their culture. And she said that he told me not to keep it. And he told her to have an abortion. She breaks down crying. You could tell the pain just talking about it when she started talking about it, the pain that brought up. And that night, when she grabbed, I think it was the scissors or the knife, some scissors, to cut off his dick, that's what happened. All that pain, like, that was her vengeance. Oh, you made me kill my baby? So I'm saying these women live with some real big scars after abortions. And we can deny it. We can pretend like that's not the case. It's the case. And then I'm the victim of the other. An unplanned pregnancy. I've never had an abortion, but that's to date the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It sucks. Having a child is a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful, wonderful thing. But you have no support, no man, no money, and you got to support that kid, and you got to take care of that kid. You just went from heaven to hell. It's heaven to give birth. It's a joy. It's awesome. It's everything to continue life. That's heaven. But doing it under those circumstances, that's hell. That's hell on earth right there. So we want to talk about, well, we're liberated. We're sexually free. We can do what we want, do who we want. But we don't want to talk about the repercussions of it all. And the STDs. And the spiritual TDs. Spiritually transmitted diseases, dysfunction, delusion. I hate to be crass, and I'm going to let my son know this is not the video to watch him, but I've watched so many women be dick drunk. They are literally dick drunk. Like that man can tell you to do anything that he wants you to do. You've got some women out here whoring themselves because their lover pimped them. How? How does he have that power over you? I think it's time for a new culture. I hate the fact that I love to travel internationally. I don't want to go, you know, and I would love to travel internationally. I haven't been that many places. I've been to Liberia, Canada, and Paris. Montreal, Paris, and a few places in Liberia. That's it, as far as my international travel. But when I went to Paris, the guys were all over me. And I always have to step back and say, well, is it because they found me attractive, a beautiful woman, and I'm appealing to the Parisians? Or is it part of it also that they have a stereotype about black women? I don't know. But I know that the images that are pervaded, the Megan Thee Stallions and Cardis and Nickies, they're not just in America, they're international. I don't want to be traveling and everybody thinking that I'm a hoe because I'm a black woman, that I'm easy, that I'm just there to titillate their senses. And some women will say, well, what's the problem with that? Well, what the problem is with that for me is I'm a mother. And it's imperative that my son eventually gets some sort of a father figure. And not just somebody that's just going to see me as their whore or their toy thing or their plaything and does not respect me intellectually and all that I bring to the table. That's what's important to me, for the sake of me and for the sake of my child and potentially the future children that will come from my womb if I decide to be a mother again. Furthermore, knowing my history, there have been a lot of stepfathers that molest their stepchildren. So when you get a man who has no control over his lower nature, where does it stop? Where does it stop? Secondly, if you're telling women it's money over everything, how do you know that that John that you're sleeping with isn't a pedophile? And that's going inside of you also goes inside of children? Where does it stop? How do you know that that John that you're sleeping with isn't into bestiality? That guy may be sleeping with his dog. When you are so lusty that you do not scrutinize your men, or if it's money over everything and you're not scrutinizing the people that you lay with, who knows who you're laying with? Some things have got to stop. Some things have got to change. We have Kamala Harris. She's black. She's Indian. She's a black woman. This is the first black woman that we have in the White House. What is she going to do? How is she going to respond to this crisis? Because right now we're in a crisis. We just pretend like we're not. We're in a crisis. We are in an economic and social crisis. And we have not demanded anything to get us out of these crises. Now, I have also said that, A, if the problem is within, then so is the solution. What is the solution for black women? Well, personally, I think that the culture has to change. Call me old school, but it's like if he's not putting a ring on you and you haven't scrutinized him, then why are you sleeping with that man when you know that the outcome could be an unplanned pregnancy? Why even risk that? If you want to be respected, then don't walk around like a hoe. Don't get mad at being disrespected and treated like a hoe when you're acting like a hoe. You can't have it both ways. Demand something from your man. It shouldn't just be the comfort of having a man that you haven't tamed your lower natures to such a degree that you just got to get some all the time. And he just happens to be somebody who's piping you down. Well, what do you demand from him? What are the expectations within your relationship? And I'm not just talking financial. I'm talking about, who is he? What are his values? Is he somebody that you can even trust around your children? Can you leave your kid at home alone with him and feel like he's dignified, he's respectable? Have you screened him, or are you just that desperate for a man? There has to be a criteria. There has to be standards. Because all that hurt that you have, and it just builds up the resentment that you have towards a black man, you have to take some degree of personal responsibility that you did not screen that individual before you laid with him. I'm going to do a part 2 of this, but I'm not particularly happy with the way that the culture has gone. I'm not particularly happy with being seen as that just because I happen to have a certain complexion, that people think that they can whore me. I'm like, who, why would you even think that that would even be a part of what? Do you know who my father is? Do you know who I am? Do you know who I'm? Nardine Faiz' daughter. Why would you even think? Ah, because all the black girls are doing it. Until next time, I'll post part 2. Peace.